Hi, this is Heidi Lostracco, and I just want to thank you all for being here today. And I also want to thank the people behind AbleNet University for the opportunity to share information about the Speak for Yourself AAC app. So, as I said, I'm Heidi Lostracco, and Renee Collender and I are speech-language pathologists who created the Speak for Yourself application. If you're not using Speak for Yourself, I think you will still find this webinar useful, so I'm glad you're here. To give you a little bit of background information, I am a speech-language pathologist, but before the creation of Speak for Yourself, I spent 2 years in nonverbal autism classrooms with high school, middle school, preschool, elementary school children, and I really fell in love with the difference that AAC makes in the lives of students and their families. So I spent the next 5 years doing AAC evaluations, and then after the evaluation, working with the teams and students to help them learn and integrate AAC into their everyday lives. And one of the unique things that I think about Renee and I is that a large amount of our time is still spent on the floors of preschools, sitting in classrooms with AAC users, and in the community encouraging socialization and generalization. So it's really such a privilege to be in a position to spend time working directly with students, parents, and professionals, and also have the ability to change the actual AAC tool to benefit them, and then by extension, we hope the thousands of other Speak for Yourself users as well. So today, what I would like to do is go over some AAC software considerations. You should be, somebody saying that they're getting sound but no picture, you should be able to see a PowerPoint presentation as well. So let me see something here. I'm sorry. All right, let's see if does this work? Is this better? Are you guys able to see the agenda now? Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. And I will try to answer questions as they come up, but if not, then I'm going to try to, leave some time at the end to answer them as well. So I'd like to go over some of the AAC software considerations, and then also the organization and observation-based features of Speak for Yourself. So, and then some of the AAC barriers and breakthroughs. I do also have some videos of students using the Speak for Yourself app, so hopefully that all comes through okay. So to begin, when we look at AAC software considerations, what we look at is what's important to people who are already using AAC. So the AAC Institute, which is a nonprofit out of Pittsburgh, did research, and what they did is they asked proficient AAC users. So your AAC users who are working in jobs and have gone to college and are using AAC to get their college education and to build relationships and get married and start families. And they asked them what the two most important things to them relative to communication are. And what they said is being able to say exactly what they want to say and being able to say it as quickly as possible. So when we're looking to, work with young children who are using AAC who aren't yet able to express that, or we're looking to really build a communication system, and in our case, to build a language system, we want to find a way to accomplish this. So being able to say exactly what they want to say, the way that that's done is by giving the student access to appropriate vocabulary. When we talk about vocabulary, we're talking about core vocabulary, which are those few hundred words that constitute the vast majority of communication, and also extended vocabulary, so those remaining words that are used less frequently, nouns that are specific to a situation or, specific to an individual. So, those are also important because there are some children who Elmo, being able to say Elmo is the thing that really gets them to buy into using the AAC, or having a page of, that has cartoon characters that they just love, or their friends in their class, and, those types of things. So it is important to have some of those nouns that really pull the children in, but to really have that core vocabulary to be able to build language around those things that interest the students. This is a study that was done by Mary Vidanji, and what she did is she followed these little children around who were just learning language, and she found that 26 words that these 26 core words comprise 96.3% of the total words used by the toddlers in this study. What they find is when they do studies on these core vocabulary words for teenagers in McDonald's or for adults that are, working in any field, for school-age children, for senior citizens in nursing homes, who are playing bingo, when they look at the vocabulary that's being used, they find that these core vocabulary words are consistent across a lifetime. So it's really important when we're looking at giving somebody a communication system to make sure that we give them the vocabulary that everybody else is using as well. So as many of you probably know, core vocabulary consists of these simple words, and they make up 80% or more of our everyday communication. This is ASHA's, I'm not going to obviously read this whole thing, but ASHA says that success in life can be directly related to the ability to communicate. And to achieve this goal, the most effective approach is spontaneous novel utterance generation. So being able to take words and recombine them to generate new utterances. So when you look at the main screen of the Speak for Yourself app, what you see is that there's 119 words, and then in that bottom right corner are the little QWERTY button that pulls up a keyboard. But these 119 words on this main screen are 119 of those core vocabulary words. The other thing that we said was important to people using AAC was being able to say what they wanted to say as quickly as possible. The way that this is done is by using motor planning to increase their communication rate. When we talk about motor planning is when you practice a movement so much that it becomes automatic. So if you have ever seen a teenager texting, how quickly their fingers move, they're not thinking about which letters they're hitting. They're thinking about the message that they need to send at that moment to their friend. Even verbal speech and talking is, that's all motor planning. So we think about what it is that we want to say, but we don't have to think that we want our tongue tip to hit the alveolar ridge, or we want our, our palate to rise and because it's, not a nasal sound. We don't have to think about all of that. We practice those movements so frequently that that's automatic, and we just have to think about the words that we want to say. I always give the example of if you've ever driven a rental car or you get a new car, and when you put the turn signal on, you have the windshield wipers going and the fluid shooting up because your motor planning is set for the vehicle that you're used to driving every day. So, imagine if you had to look and see, what you were hitting each time when you had to hit a turn signal. I mean, it would be dangerous. So we really rely on motor planning for everything that we do. And, that's true with AAC systems as well, with augmentative and alternative communication systems. So I have a little activity, and this is going to be kind of interesting because usually it's done in person where you have something in front of you and you're able to do it. But we also use motor planning with our eyes. So this is a QWERTY keyboard. So this is a keyboard that everybody's used to. And if you just take a second and on this keyboard, I'd like you to look with your eyes as if you were typing the word winter. Okay, so you notice that's probably pretty fast. You're probably able to do that pretty automatically, that if you had to type it with your fingers, you would be able to do that pretty seamlessly because this is a keyboard that we're all used to. This next keyboard, I'm sorry, as I'm looking at this, the quality of that isn't as great as I would hope, but if you can just take this is an ABC keyboard, which you see sometimes in special education classrooms and on different apps and devices. If you're listening to this and you're out there working, with students, if you're doing this right now where you're requiring them to type on an ABC keyboard sometimes and a QWERTY keyboard other times, I would really encourage you to make a decision or if you're listening to this internationally and you're using a different type of keyboard, as much as possible, I would encourage you to give them access to the standard keyboard that they're going to be using across environments. It's very difficult to switch between keyboards. So if you look at this, though, and type the word winter. Does it take you a little bit longer? Just because now you know the alphabet. Everybody who's listening knows the alphabet and the letters, the order of the letters. But it still took a little bit longer because this isn't how you're used to spelling words. This isn't how you're used to typing. Now, if you look at this keyboard, if you can, just type the word winter on this one. All right, that may have taken you a little bit longer. The reason is this is a keyboard that we're not familiar with. This is actually called the Dvorak keyboard. And back when keyboards were just being started and shortly after QWERTY was already starting to be really implemented, researchers at Dvorak came out and he said that this is a quicker way to be able to type. If you notice that home row is that your vowels and your most frequently used consonants. So he said this is a more effective way to do it. And he actually proved in studies that once people learned how to do this, it was faster. But because people had already adopted the QWERTY keyboard and because it was already, really the typewriter industry had adopted it, then the motor planning for that was so strong that nobody uses this keyboard anymore. So it probably took you a little bit longer. So because this is a keyboard that you're not used to, your motor planning isn't set for this. Now, if you used a keyboard like this for a long time, you would get used to it and you would be able to use it. But if it changed every couple of days or every couple of months and then you had to get used to it again, it would really slow you down because then you have to rely on being able to scan. So when you're thinking about this in terms of AAC systems, that's really where you see the students who, start off with 20 buttons and then have to go to 40 and then go to 60. And what you see is that their motor planning, every time that happens, every time that they achieve, where they've learned enough language that somebody says, they're doing great, let's move them up. They have to relearn all of those words that they started off already knowing. So they have to relearn that vocabulary each time. So if you're working with a student on any system, what you want to do as much as possible, as much as their fine motor skills will allow, is start them with smaller buttons and keep the vocabulary closed initially, and then open the vocabulary, as they start to make progress. So when we're looking at clinically sound AAC, we're looking at core vocabulary, using consistent motor planning principles. Speak for Yourself has a library of 11,000 Smarty symbols. There are also 10 voice options currently that come with the app. Some of them are the Apple voices and also the Sierra Proc voices. And you also have the ability to purchase a cappella voices as in-app purchases. We integrated the children's voices in version 2.3, and then we'll be integrating the adult voices in version 2.4. You also have the ability to customize vocabulary, use photos, change pronunciation within your editing functions. So let's look at what's the difference. So one of the big differences with Speak for Yourself is that it doesn't have the complex page navigation. So you're able to access 14,000 words with no more than 2 touches to say a word. The way that that's done is that main screen, I'm going to just go back here for a second so you can see that. So if you look at the center at the word eat, and it has the little corner cut out, meaning that it goes to a secondary screen, that page links to additional vocabulary, but then it comes back to the main screen. So that's how you're able to access, each button has the ability to do that. So you're able to access those 14,000 words, but with no more than 2 touches. You can also start with 1 word and 1 touch. So you can make that screen with those 119 core words and that QWERTY button as basic as a Big Mac switch. You could take it where you turn off that link to the secondary screen, and as soon as the student touches the word eat, it's going to say eat. But as they start to grow their vocabulary, and now you say, well, they're doing great. They're saying eat, and they're doing that pretty reliably. Every time they see something that they want to eat, they're using it. So now I want to give them a choice, and I want to know if they are interested in pretzels or chips or cookies or what it is that they want to eat. When you transition to that, the button for the word eat is directly under where it is on this main screen. So if you touched eat and you double tapped it, it would then say the word eat. So, and I'm sorry, I know it's a little bit confusing and difficult. I wish Apple would come out with a way that you can share an iPad onto your MacBook, but I haven't seen that yet. So if anybody, and the Best Buy people and the Apple people don't know how to do it either, so if anybody out there does know how to do it, I'd be very interested in that. But that button directly underneath eat on the main screen will also say eat. So when you transition to that secondary screen, you can say cookies are delicious, but you can also say the word eat by double tapping that. The reason that we did it that way is because we would notice that when we were working with students, their reaction, if they were used to it being a single touch, their reaction was to hit directly under that same place. And it turns out that that's actually a human instinct. So if you think about the vending machine, if you go and you push the button to say that you want a Coke, you push the button and nothing happens. Your reflex, your instinct is to push that button again. And for some people, again and again and again. So you really, that's something that doesn't have to be taught. So we try to, as much as we can, as much as we could in the design, make it where it's very automatic for what we already saw students doing. You're also able to text and share contents of the message window. You can speak for yourself out. So we talked about the two-touch vocabulary and that every word in Speak for Yourself is no more than 2 touches away, and that secondary screens can be linked and the main screen for words spoken by tapping directly under the button on the main screen, because some of the children that we were working with were having difficulty when they had to touch more than 2 buttons to say a word. So what we essentially did is we took away the cognitive load of having to navigate through categories. So if you think about having to go into, you want to say that, you need a fork or I'm sorry, actually, so you want to say that, you want a cookie and you have to go into the food folder, and then you have to go into snacks, and then you go to cookie. And then sometimes, depending on how a system is programmed, then you have to navigate back out of that to your main screen. So you always have to be scanning, and you have to know where you are within that device. So for Speak for Yourself, we did as much as we could. We took away that need to navigate to different screens and those navigational demands. So I want to talk a little bit, because if you are online at all and you're listening to anything, or you're reading anything about AAC systems, you have probably heard the term robust vocabulary. So what I want to do is just take a few minutes to brainstorm what words come to mind when I say raisinets. So because, if you want to jump in and give me some suggestions, I'll definitely, read them. But I'm going to, just give you some that people typically say. They'll say things like chocolate or delicious or yummy or chewy. Sometimes people say gross if they don't like raisinets. So, when this is done live and in person. But what I'd like you to do is watch. This is Jess, and she is a lover of raisinets. So I want you to take a look and notice the word that she uses to describe raisinets.
Got everything? You are all set, my friend. You're all set. It's a blessing, yes. Raisinets are a blessing. So sad, you were bad. I think you have. Do you think you have plenty of snacks for the show? You think you're good? All right, woman. Here, let's get your let's put your seatbelt on and get going. There you go. Nice. Need a little help?
So if you are making a communication board for, somebody who loves raisinets, you probably wouldn't think to put the word blessing on that communication board. But because she has access to all of that vocabulary anytime she needs it, she's able to access that and use the word blessing to talk about raisinets, which really gives you some more insight into how much she really cares about them. And, also into her cognition, that's something that she's pulling from, and she was able to go right to that word in the device to say it, because her vocabulary isn't restricted depending on her environment or depending on the situation that she's in at that moment. So one of the things that we often have people say is that this screen is a little overwhelming. So when you open the Speak for Yourself app and you look at this, there are a lot of words on there and very, very little dead space. So what you can do is you can close words to start with as little, as we said, as one word. So you see this is a lot more manageable. You can easily go to that open close button if you see it up at the top there, and you can close everything and then just highlight the buttons that you want to start with. So you can start very basically. We also get some feedback with this about fine motor. The buttons are small, so I will get into that a little bit later. But I do want you to just look at the screen and take notice that all of that black area is dead space. So if a student touches that black area, it's not going to activate anything. So it gives them a little bit of room, a little bit of margin for error. They're able to kind of, refine their fine motor skills to be able to access the buttons. And for a lot of students, as their language grows, their fine motor skills also improve. So we look at how do you bridge the gap between having that robust vocabulary, because we want the students to be able to access and say anything they want, anytime they want, and also having a manageable starting point so that, it's not so overwhelming that they have all of these words open. So what we have is in the Speak for Yourself app is we give them a way to explore on a device that keeps the position of the words consistent and also allows access to explore a large vocabulary. So the Speak for Yourself app comes preloaded with a capacity to store over 14,000 words, and it has almost 5,000 words that are pre-programmed. So what we have is so that you can toggle between having that limited vocabulary and having access to that full, robust vocabulary with all 5,000 of those words is the Babble feature. So what the Babble feature allows you to do is just that. It allows you to toggle between having a more limited vocabulary and having all of the words open. So you can open, and that's just with the touch of a button. That's also, I just want to mention, on its own lock. So I really do recommend that if you're using Speak for Yourself already, or if you're going to use it in the future, that you leave that Babble feature unlocked, because that gives the student the ability to independently toggle between having all of those words open and having their more visually limited vocabulary open. And it gives you the opportunity to see if they're hitting Babble and going in and saying something, that's probably a word that you want to open in their regular vocabulary. And it also gives you some insight into their interest. If they're going into Babble and they're consistently going in and talking about different vehicles, there's a 1 in 5,000 chance that that's random. They're probably doing that because they're interested in vehicles. So it gives you a good idea of words to keep open for them, and also of activities to kind of incorporate language. So if they're already naturally interested in vehicles and you start talking about vehicles and modeling, information about vehicles using AAC, then you're probably going to get their interest a lot more than if you're just talking about something that you're interested in or that you think they may be interested in. The other big issue that we would always come across when we were working in classrooms and with teams is that people didn't know how to find words, and also with parents. The device would go home and they were doing everything for their children that a mom or dad does, and then looking at the device was overwhelming. So what we did is we have this search feature, and it's really been instrumental in helping teams be able to have the confidence to use AAC more in the classroom, because they have the confidence to be able to find words. So the way that it works is you have this little magnifying glass up top, and when you touch that, you're able to actually spell the word that you want to find. And then if you see the word "so" on the screen, it has a purple highlight around it. What the app actually does is it highlights the path to get to that word. So it highlights "so," and then if you're going to find, I have a little video of it, so hopefully you'll see that. But it'll highlight the word and then navigate to the secondary screen and highlight it on there for you as well. So a lot of students are actually using that as a visual prompt. So as soon as they see somebody going to search for something, they're following that purple box to see what it says, what the device says when they follow that. So here is a quick little video.
For example, you wanted to find the word thirsty. What you would do is you would touch the magnifying glass and then type in the word you're looking for. And you see that it starts to fill the words in. So what you could do is actually touch thirsty here. And then you see it blinking down here, the little purple box around field. And when you touch it, it navigates to the secondary screen, and then here you can see where it says thirsty. That's how you use the search feature and Speak for Yourself.
Okay. So you see how that would be very useful. I mean, with all of those words, when we're talking about 5,000 and 14,000 words, And especially for somebody who, speech language pathologist who's, only seeing the child a few times a week, or the occupational therapist who, only sees them, for certain amounts of time, but then also is working on other things. But this gives anybody who's working with that student the tool to be able to say, oh, hold on, let me find that word for you. All right, so this word is, of course, bathroom. And if you say that word, you've been saying that word the same way your entire life. So what we also did in Speak for Yourself is we put this no duplication feature in it. So once the student learns how to say a word, you say it the same way for the rest of your life. And that's true also for students who are using devices. So if you do try to add a word in there that's already in there, you will get this little flag that says it's a duplicate word. So in this example, it says the word water can be found by touching drink on the home screen. At that point, you're able to either choose okay. So, if you know where drink is and you're like, oh, yeah, that's right, water's there, you could just say okay, and that little window will go away. Or you can touch find it, and that's going to go through that same process as the search feature. So what it would do is it would highlight the word drink and then highlight the word water on the secondary screen so that, it'll navigate you to show you where that word is. If you don't like where it is, so if you wanted water under want, or under need, or wherever it is that you think water belongs, then you can delete it and move it there and, put it on the new screen, but it won't allow you to enter the same word twice into the app. So what we would find is that students would have, bathroom in 4 different places in their device, and 4 different people would be showing them where it was, in all varying places. So for example, we would have a student who the speech language pathologist said, okay, I think bathroom is a room in the house. So they put it under there and they taught the student how to say that. Well, when the teacher was going to look for the bathroom, they think of it as a place to go. So they went in to go to try to find it, and it wasn't there, so they add it. And then, at home, mom thinks it's a basic need, so she puts it underneath. So we would have students with the same word in all of these various places, and everybody's showing them a different way to get to it to say the same word, and it just isn't a good use of your teaching time and also of their learning time. So where they could be learning 4 new words, instead they're learning 4 places and what context to use that word in each of those places. The other feature that's unique to Speak for Yourself is Hold That Thought. So what it allows you to do is compose thoughts and stories to use later, and also allows the AAC user not to lose utterances when they're interrupted. So for example, if somebody's out to dinner and they're starting to tell a story and the waitress comes over and says, what do you want to drink? Traditionally what we would see is that AAC user would either have to add the drink on to the end of what they were already saying in the message window, or they would have to go back to, or they would have to, clear it out, say what they wanted to drink, and then start their thought all over again. So Hold That Thought is meant to eliminate that. So here's a little video of this.
The Hold That Thought feature is a feature that actually takes something that your AAC user is trying to say and saves it if they get interrupted. So if somebody's saying, and then somebody asks them what they want to drink, what they can do is they can push this little speech bubble up here, and it sets what they were saying up into a temporary holding window, and then they can answer. So they could say,
water, please.
Okay, and then when they are done with that and they want to clear that out, when they touch this little speech bubble again, it's going to bring back what they were saying. In this little window, you can hold multiple thoughts. So if you're, as a child, preparing for show and tell, or if there are several questions to a worksheet that the class is doing, they can choose any of them, and when they touch it, it's going to put it into the message window.
Okay. You can also back up the Speak for Yourself app, of course, to iTunes or Dropbox, and you can also back it up through email beginning in version 2.3. So we were getting feedback that Dropbox wasn't HIPAA compliant, it wasn't secure. So what we actually did is we added in the ability to be able to back it up and send the file through email. and then when the person receives that email, they would just press and hold it like you would any file that you would receive on a iDevice, and they are able to then go ahead and open the file directly into Speak for Yourself. So it works in the same process as this, but through email rather than being on a third party like Dropbox or through iTunes. So here's a quick little backup. So you go to vocabulary, you back up the vocabulary and photos, and in this I just sent the backup to iTunes, and then you're done. So it really does take 7 seconds, and then to pull it back in, it's equally as fast. If for some reason it gets lost or deleted, or the iPad falls in a swimming pool, or anything happens, you have that backup. There's also a history feature in Speak for Yourself that has really come in. I mean, from our experience with students, we would always struggle because we would say, they're doing so great. We have all these excellent stories and these anecdotal type of data about these things that they've done and what times they've commented and how their vocabulary really seems like it's grown. But now with adding the history feature in, it actually gives teens and parents and everyone the ability to actually quantify how much their language has grown and how much they're using it and when they're using it. And a lot of it is modeling, so that is something to kind of keep in mind, that it doesn't distinguish if something has been modeled or if something is said by the user at this point right now on February 18, 2016. So as soon as we find a way to distinguish that, that is something that we would like to be able to do. So what it does allow you to do is you can email the raw data in CSV format, and it'll open in Excel or numbers. So you can see this data, if you see on the bottom right where the little graph is in that window, that is down to the 100th of a second. It shows everything that is done in the app. So when I say it records everything, I mean it records anything that's typed in the app. It's not recording anybody's voices. So I've gotten that question before. The other thing that we have is the summary. So the history summary calculates the MLU and the communication rate, and it also tracks words used and utterances. So if you look at this little sample, it says that there are accessible words, that there are 2,993 accessible words that the student has access to right now. And if you look down, it calculates the MLU. It also you can look at the actual utterances. So if you're not sure, if you're like, that MLU just doesn't seem right, you can actually look and touch that line, and it'll show you what the utterances actually are. And it also looks at words used and ranks them by frequency. So if you go in here, you can see in that top. Okay, can everyone hear me okay? I'm sorry. So it also keeps the time and date stamped utterances. So you can look and say, oh, okay, you know what, they're not really using 4 utterances. They're just not so great about clearing the message window before they speak it. Or, you have those students who like to fill up the message window and speak, 22 words. So you can look at it and say, really, and manually say, well, it's really more 2 to 3 word utterances. And then you can see on the bottom there that it tracks the words used. So you can see in that sample, I was used 11 times, you was used 10 times, no was used 8 times. So you can really use that and say, wow, look at that. They're using a lot of core vocabulary. Or you can look at that and say, the top 10 words are cookies, pretzels, SpongeBob, whatever it is that student's interested in, which is great. But how can we take those things that they already are interested in and start to build some core vocabulary around that so that it can be generalized? And you can also email this history summary to parents, teachers, therapists, or yourself to track progress. So it's really very valuable in a meeting to be able to say, okay, well, in the last 2 months, the student has said 3,000 utterances, which is, a nicer and more definitive way to kind of express growth than to just say, well, yeah, they're really using it a lot more. So you have actual numbers to say that, this is how well they're doing. Or to say, that there's an issue with this because they haven't had a word added to their device in a month and a half. They aren't using any additional words, and to really be able to kind of look at that. Yeah, I see that somebody was asking about being able to record modeling words and use their words separately. And we are looking at different ways that we could do that. What we're running into is the kids are really smart. So if we give any indication of saying, okay, if you do this first, it'll indicate that you're modeling, we don't have a way to really ensure that the child, doesn't also mimic that gesture or, do that same thing as well. So it has to be very subtle and also very easy for the person modeling to be able to remember. And then we would also have to find a way to kind of shut that off, because we don't want the data to be skewed in the other direction either. I know a lot of times when I'm modeling, what I do is it's very back and forth. So I may model something and then the student jumps in. So that is definitely something that we would like to add in a future version. I just want to mention also one of the things that people say about using apps as a negative thing about using apps is that there's not support. And if you are not already a member of the Speak for Yourself users group on Facebook, I really encourage you to join it. I answer as many emails as I can. My phone number is on our website, and if I'm traveling between places and able to answer my phone, I do. This group has been so successful in really helping and supporting a lot of users and a lot of parents and a lot of professionals that are just getting started. There is somebody on there. I'll go, I'll be in a classroom or something, and I come out and I look, and I'll see that somebody asked a question, and really within 5 to 10 minutes they have a whole conversation and a bunch of answers. So thank you to everybody who's on that group, who is so helpful and supportive to people asking questions and to each other. And also, if you are using any kind of AAC, you're welcome to join. And there are people using apps and devices other than the Speak for Yourself app. So I would really encourage you to do that. It's a great community. As far as additional features, I do just want to mention that you can edit and add words to personalize the secondary pages. So if you want to, Google something and put it into the app, you can definitely do that. You can also change the voices and customize them. So I mentioned that we have the option as an in-app purchase for $24.99 to purchase acapella group voices. And also, we will be supporting the vocal ID voices this year. So I don't know if you're familiar with vocal ID, just a quick little some information about them. What they actually do is they take a child's vocalizations and they merge it with a donor voice similar in age and location to that child, and they make that voice has the essence of the user's voice. So that's really exciting. We're really happy to be able to support that and to have that kind of technology available to Speak for Yourself users. I want to just mention some barriers to AAC, and I am not going to spend a lot of time on this, but one of the things that we get when we show the Speak for Yourself app is people will say that this is great, but this child or my child or this client doesn't have the cognitive skills to learn such a complex system. So I just want to say that, language gives us the ability to express cognition. So this is a really dangerous prerequisite skill that people will talk about a lot of times. And the more words that somebody has, the more likeliness that the words that a child wants to say will be there. So if they look at this, when I start with a child and they're just beginning, they've decided to use Speak for Yourself, I'll show them everything open, and I hit that Babble feature pretty quickly, even though I'm starting with a small vocabulary, so that they know that they have all of those words that are going to be accessible to them, and it's not going to be just limited to a very small vocabulary that's decided on by me. So that's something that, I really think makes a big difference. If you aren't able to express yourself, then how are you going to tell people how much you know? So I would really encourage you. There have been kids who've tested so low on cognitive tests, and they're able to put together 3 and 4 words pretty quickly using Speak for Yourself or, using other AAC as well. So please, if you're, thinking that that's a reason not to use an AAC device for your child, I would just really encourage you to try it and give them a chance. The other thing that we get a lot is, can you make the buttons any bigger? So this is, of course, this is a picture of Jess, and I just want you to notice her hands. She has a lot of fine motor issues, but she's actually figured out how to isolate her finger to be able to touch these small buttons. That's an iPad mini that she's using. If you look at where her hands are, if a child is having a hard time with the fine motor access for the, you know, if it's for Speak for Yourself or for any app, if they're having a hard time with fine motor access, using bigger buttons, they're still going to miss. So you can see where sorry, hold on 1 second. You can see where her hands would be hitting other parts of the screen if she wasn't able to, you know, if there were other buttons there. So whether there were 9 big buttons or whether there are 120 buttons available, she's still going to miss hit on the screen. So you see she's figured out to keep her other fingers up and out of the way. And a lot of times key guards will also help with that. So it helps the fingers from dragging on the screen. This is a graphic that we made, and there's actually a blog post on our website about it as well. So if you look at the center square there, that's the size of of course, probably not the size of your screen, but the comparable size of the Speak for Yourself button on a full-size iPad. So because we've gotten this question a lot, of course we have considered it. And if we said, okay, we're going to increase the button size and we're only going to put 60 buttons on the page instead of 120, what you see happens is that it only increases the button size by less than a centimeter. So it's a very small increase in button size, but that student loses 75% of their potential vocabulary. So when you're looking at fine motor and visual issues, I would just encourage you to really look and make sure that when you're making that decision that you've at least tried it, because you're significantly impacting somebody's language if you don't at least give it a try and say, okay, can they access that smaller button? Maybe I will be able to you know, maybe they will be able to do that because they have all that. Remember I mentioned earlier about having the black space there. There is a key guard that fits. Beyond Adaptive makes one, and LaserPix also makes one. And I do just want to mention on the iPad Pro, if you have a child who's not mobile and not carrying the device around and you're going to mount it because it is a larger device, that the buttons are larger on that as well, and LaserPix is making key guards for that as well. So when we talk about breaking through the barriers, what we want to talk about is AAC intervention strategies. So when we talk about that, one of the things that we definitely talk about is aided language input or modeling. Also reaction therapy, so giving somebody, when they hit something, even if it doesn't make sense to you, even if you don't know where that came from and it seems like it's completely out of left field, reacting to it in a way that gives it some kind of meaning. So what I've done in the past, even if it's say something like the Golden Gate Bridge, I'll say, oh yeah, that's the Red Bridge in San Francisco. Just because what would you say if a child said something to you, I would just recommend reacting in the same way that you would if a child verbally said something. So I have a little video here, and I'm actually kind of hesitant to use it. So hopefully this works the way it's supposed to, but if not, then we'll get back to it, and you'll have all the links. But let me just, okay.
We do it like this. No, sure.
Crunchy.
Delicious crunchy almonds.
Almonds.
Delicious crunchy almonds. Yum. You know how to get to my heart. Talk about
So that's how you know if you've modeled something that the child definitely wants to be able to say. So, and also if you notice, he actually verbally said that. So using that for verbal children, being able to model something. What I've noticed with children who have verbal skills, if you model something on the app or device. If it's something that they want to say or that's something that they want, they will definitely say it. If it's something that they don't want, a lot of times they may just look and then, not respond to it. So when you're modeling, definitely try to model what it is that you think that child, based on their body language and based on what they're doing and how they're reacting, model something that you think that they want to say. This is a video of Dana Nieder from the Uncommon Sense blog. And this is a great example of, what I'm talking about with reaction therapy, where you actually are responding to what the child says. So we're not going to watch this whole video, but I just want you to see where it switches over for her little Will, where he's saying drink, and you can see it switch from him actually wanting the drink to it being a social interaction. So here is that.
Okay. Well, why don't you use the pink saucer? Whoop. Smoothie, maybe later. Do you know what we do with a smoothie? We drink. We drink a smoothie. Do you need a drink? Here's your milk. You need a drink? Here's your milk. You need a drink? Here's your milk. Oh, you need a drink? Oh, here's your milk. Oh my goodness. Oh, you need a drink? Here's your milk.
So you can see that where it really turned into a social interaction, as opposed to him just wanting the drink of milk. So for if you follow the Uncommon Sense blog, you have Maya also in that video, and you see for her, it's right around the second time he says it. She thinks it's funny the way that her mom's responding, but for him, it takes him a few times, and then he's definitely doing it where he's just he's giggling and just enjoying the interaction. I would also say to prompt with the least intrusive, most effective prompts. So as much as you can, avoid taking a child's hand. If it's really a motor issue and you're trying to help them hold, those other fingers back, or, putting your finger under their wrist, to kind of support their hand, but, not grabbing it and forcing them to say something. A lot of times you'll see kids fighting those kind of prompts. You also, as much as possible, accept gestures in the model language on a device. So if a child shakes their head no, they don't have to then say no on the device also. So if you want to model it on the device so that they have an additional way to say it. But I think that sometimes people get in trouble when in terms of the students are not as willing to use the device because it's too hard. So they're already doing everything they can to communicate, and they're being told to do these additional steps and to, say something in multiple ways. And then the other thing that I would suggest as far as intervention is building language around the child's loves. So things that they really are very interested in and that they already love. And there is, I thought I had it in here, but there is on our website a building language map that actually goes through all of the different ways where you could teach 20 words just based on one thing that a child enjoys. So you may want to check that out also. So I just have a couple of little videos here. So here is a little user who is using her device to request. So,
what do you want me to do?
Eleanor.
Steve. Oh, you want me to turn Bluetooth on with Steve? Yeah. Oh, okay. We can do that. Is there anything that you want to eat? Oh, you want to eat a cookie? Can you say please?
Please. Bliss, clear, speedy, cookie, please.
Oh, okay, great.
So you can see she's a very, very young. She actually started using Speak for Yourself at 19 months, and this is her 8 months later. It's a teacher.
Heidi.
Which people are I going to pick?
It's my pet.
My pet. So that is for anybody who is worried that if they use AAC, their child is not going to develop verbal speech. It's such a benefit to use AAC. It really does help with verbal speech development. I mean, you could see there now Eleanor just turned 4, and she no longer uses AAC. She's verbal and able to talk and use very age-appropriate speech. So really giving them a way to take the pressure off of their verbal speech actually helps the verbal speech. And it gives them communication. It limits their frustration. So it does all of these very beneficial things for them, and it does not inhibit verbal speech development. But even if they're not able to develop verbal speech, it gives them a way they can break free from this trap of being stuck in, prerequisites of cognitive skills or fine motor skills by presuming competence, providing a robust, comprehensive communication system, and then treating everything that they say as if it was said with intent. Need another video.
Yes, we're going this way, and then we're going to make another one. Wow. You know what I didn't get, though? I didn't pick up lines for later. What did you do about that?
Kitty.
The movie theater. But first, we're going to go have lunch at Bar Louie. Sound good? I'm hungry.
Has Wendy's
We did Wendy's last time.
video
We went to Wendy's last time.
dress
Oh, the video? Yeah, the dress in Cinderella is
glitter?
It does. It has a lot of glitter. I know, her dress is beautiful. I can't wait to see it on the big screen. Oh yeah, you're right. There's a wine store over there. But we don't have time to stop now. We want to make it to lunch in the movie. Right? Right. All right, here. I'll fix the
All right, so you see she really used, she used gestures, she used her verbal speech, and she's really putting together, language on the device as well. And that line, when we're sitting there at the light and she points over to the wine store, that was just written word, so she had to read that. So you really see all of those different things coming together and all of those skills that she's using in that short little interaction. So if a child's not able to effectively communicate wants, needs, thoughts, ideas, feelings, knowledge, fears, then that child is a candidate for AAC. So really, even if they have verbal speech, it really does help because even sometimes people who have verbal speech have a hard time expressing the language that they're actually thinking. So being able to have a way to express it without having to get stuck, with the motor movements that are required for their mouth really does help to expand that language. So thank you so much for listening. And I also want to just mention that Jess's mom writes a blog called You Don't Say AAC, and the blog with Dana and Maya was called Uncommon Sense. So thank you so much. We have a few minutes to answer questions. And if you have any questions for me that I don't get the chance to answer, then feel free to email me or, like I said, call me. I am accessible by phone. And anything that I can do to help, or if you have any suggestions or feedback, we definitely have done. Most of our updates have been based on user feedback. Yes, you will get a certificate for this webinar. It will be emailed to you by, it will be emailed to you by AbleNet University. And as far as logic for where the words are located, you'll see on, let me see if I could just go back here. Hold on one sec. You'll see on the screen, over to, on the left-hand side, you have your pronouns. In the center, because each of those buttons, all of the verb conjugations are to the right in the same order. All of the verb conjugations to the right are in the same order. So what you can actually do is you can kind of look, and most of the verbs are in the center, and then you have more of your prepositions and adverbs kind of along the right-hand side. As far as why they're organized in that way, we did try to do it alphabetically, but it just wasn't working for the way that things had to align. So it is difficult because they're all in the same spot, but because of the motor planning, they're all always going to stay in the same spot. The Smarty Symbols website has you can make resources there. That's the library. It's smartysymbols.com, and that gives you access to the library of symbols. And I think it's a relatively low subscription cost, and they give discounts to school districts, and they also give free trials. So and they run certain specials at certain times, but I've seen where they give a month free trial, so you can kind of try it out and see if it's something that is beneficial to you. And there's also the Custom Boards app, that is an app that has all of the symbols and the ability to make different materials and game boards and low-tech options. You can also, of course, print screens. You could take snapshots of the screens and print them. We do also have the message sharing, and what you can, in the message window sharing, what you can actually do is you can take a photo and it'll crop the message window out with the symbol support as well. So it gives you the ability to be able to do that. Any other questions? I really thank you all so much for being here. Like I said, I really appreciate it. I know for a lot of you it's your lunchtime, so thank you, and thank you for all of you who have been so helpful with the growth of Speak for Yourself and also sharing your children's stories. So